Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today's Tuesday, October 1st, 2013. It's 6:30 p.m. We're at the Palm Coast Community Center for the regularly scheduled meeting of the Palm Coast City Council. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Mayor Netz?
Here.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Here.
Councilmember DiLorenzo?
Here.
Councilmember Lewis?
Here.
Councilmember Ferguson?
Here.
Mayor, all members are present.
Thank you very much. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of the September 17th City Council meeting, the September 18th City Council special budget hearing, and the September 24th City Council workshop. Are there any additions, corrections, or is there a motion for approval?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries without objection. Agenda item number 2, proclamation encouraging our community to raise the pink flag, recognize October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I think this has special meaning for me, so I think I'm going to do this one. Yeah, it was just a couple of months ago that my wife finished her radiation treatments at our local hospital, so it is my pleasure to present this proclamation. Whereas breast cancer is the most frequently diagnosed cancer in women, with 230,000 new cases expected to occur in women this year, ranking it second among all cancer deaths and accounting for nearly 1 in 3 cancers diagnosed in the United States women. And whereas only 10% of people diagnosed with breast cancer have a family history, and with an increase in incidence rates since 1990 being predominantly in women 50 years or older, and whereas early detection and timely screening mammograms have helped boost the breast cancer survivor rate to more than 2.6 million in the United States, resulting in a 33% decline in mortality since 1990. And whereas the City of Palm Coast is joining Florida Hospital Flagler's Pink Army efforts to fight breast cancer by helping to sponsor a running series, Pink Army 5K Run Walk, on Sunday, October 13th, an event that will directly benefit the community, with proceeds going to expand educational opportunities and future mammograms for many more qualified women. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and the City Council hereby proclaim October 2013 as Raise the Pink Flag Month in support of breast cancer awareness, and encourage all women to pursue early breast cancer screening and other possible diagnostic services to avoid becoming one of this nation's mortality. And my pleasure to sign this is first day of October. John Netz as Mayor. I'm sure you want to say a few words.
On behalf of the team at Florida Hospital Flagler, let me commend you, Mayor, and the City Council. This proclamation helps to draw attention to a very, very important cause. Our mothers, our wives, our daughters are at risk, and if we can somehow improve the early detection, and by the way, this is not just a ladies' issue. We have men who also struggle with breast cancer, and we need to be sensitive to them. But my thanks for your help in raising awareness for this important preventative issue that we can help improve the health status of the people in our community. So thank you very much.
Can we get a picture? Certainly. City Council, come on up and join us.
John, do you want others to come?
Everybody.
Sure.
Everybody
wants their picture in the paper. Come on up.
Come on. Keep over. Now we're going to have to squeeze together, guys. Squeeze in several deep. There you go.
All right.
Frame us, Cindy. What?
Okay, I'm good. All right. Smile. 1, 2, 3. We're gonna do a couple, so you guys hold still.
One of you guys is going to get a good picture.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
Agenda item number 3, presentation of the 2013 Intracoastal Waterway Cleanup.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Denise Bevan, Senior Environmental Planner. Honored to be here tonight to highlight our 6th annual Intracoastal Waterway Cleanup results. The event was held on September 7th. And so just to start with a few highlights and what our goals are for this event. Of course, our event objectives focus on removing pollution from the waterways, but we're also very much concerned of volunteer safety and convenience. And we also want to expand volunteer experiences. We try to change it up every year. So just to focus in on our core directive and where we focus our cleanup efforts, of course in our saltwater canals and the intracoastal is our focus. It's been that focus since the beginning, since our original event in 2008. We want to expand awareness, and what that means is that we try to include an educational element of what pollution does to our waterways. And we also conduct it every year in conjunction with the International Coastal Cleanup Day. And this is just a snapshot from last year. United States leads the world, and it is a global effort in cleaning up every year its waterways. And I believe it's just under 100 countries contribute to this every year. So this is just a snapshot to give you a timeline. Of course, our first event was in 2008. We focus on our community groups and organizations, families. We try to bring in a contest and fun prize element, and we focus always on our volunteers because we couldn't do it without them. Who are our sponsors this year? Florida Inland Navigation District has been our prominent sponsor each year. Since 2008, they contribute $5,000 through a grant process. We also have on board Ripple Effect and Tropical Kayaks, 2 businesses that provide eco tours and rentals. They contribute gift certificates and also event day participation by utilizing some of their resources. Winn-Dixie has been on board for a couple years now. They contribute water. Waste Pro, they donate at no charge dumpsters at very important locations to our volunteers so they don't have to throw that stinky garbage in the back of their car and truck it all the way to Holland Park. So we try to make that convenient for our volunteers also. And our most recent and first time sponsor is Marineland. And in this PowerPoint presentation, I'll highlight some of their contributions to this year's event. Safety, safety, safety. We can't say it enough. We do all that we can, including an insert into the cleanup kit where they get all the supplies that they need. And we also provide an event orientation and early kit pickup. And what that is to allow large groups that want to hit the pavement that morning and organize on a grander scale. They can go straight out into the event on the Saturday, which was September 7th. And we actually provided 386 on early orientation and safety day, which is the Saturday before the event. And that's just a snapshot of some of our volunteers that do this very monotonous kit preparation. They actually put together 500 kits just to make it convenient to our volunteers on event day. Another component of safety, safety, safety is that we actually have our public works staff and some other staff go out and actually provide water directly to our volunteers. As part of the kit to our volunteers, we provide a reusable water bottle, and we have coolers that actually go out into the event locations and provide water, because we do it early in the morning, but that doesn't mean that we can't do more to avoid dehydration. So in regards to safety, Marineland contributed over 100 life vests free of charge. And what we did during the event was actually have our volunteers fitted. And you can actually see Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation officers fitting volunteers to make sure that they were correctly suited for the life vest. I actually learned a lot about life vests during that event, that even though it feels snug, it's not snug enough. So we actually had that as a component, which was a great asset when you think of being on the water and being safe. And Marineland was an amazing partner in that. And when you think Marineland, you think marine life. And so one of our new elements this year was Name Our Mascot. And we actually did that as a social media push. And so we actually did a campaign. And we came up with the manatee as this year's honorary mascot. And what we did on Facebook was ask for people to nominate their name for the manatee. My favorite is Moo Moo, by far. But Moo Moo didn't win. And actually, from the amount of entries, it was 29 entries to name the manatee. And we used a component called SurveyMonkey. And so a week before the event, we asked people to actually vote on their favorite name of those 29. We got 36 votes, and Captain Humanity actually won. Very, very neat name. And so Captain Humanity is actually seen on the event T-shirts and also on the kit bags, which this is actually a new type of kit that we've used this year. And with a focus on our trails and safety, it's orange with reflected stripes. So our volunteers, instead of going with a reusable shopping bag, they can use this on our trails and our parks. Other unique volunteer experiences that aren't new: Most Unique Find Contest, Most Pounds Collected Contest. These are samples from our groups this year. And we're very proud to say we have new groups and some very well-established groups I'll be highlighting later. So how did we do? Very busy graph here, but what I want to bring to your attention is that we have over 500 volunteers this year, which is very impressive, new groups, and we actually collected a lot of trash. We went up last year. And what we do is we ask our volunteers, just on a general understanding of what they think they collected in pounds, is to estimate. We don't weigh them or anything like that, but from a general, we try to keep track of it and see how we do from year to year. And so what did we find? These are actually the entries for the Most Unique Find Contest. So one of my favorite ones is a car bumper, bunny costume, fish hooker, which isn't too unique, but I wish I would have found the stack of lotto tickets, so that was my miss. And then we also have the winner, the child's porta potty. And what we had here was our honorary judges every year actually pick from the items that are brought back to Holland Park. And Holland Park is our hub for the event. The volunteers start there and they end there, and they get to enjoy hot dogs, discussions. Of course, we had the life vest fitting, but the FWC officers, they were honorary judges, and by no fault of my own, they chose the child's porta potty. So unfortunately, the Merrick family, I do not believe is here, but for the Most Pounds Collected, I would like to recognize Home Depot team number 6363 at the podium and have them be recognized if council would allow that.
Come on up.
Come on now.
So this is a new group to our Waterway Cleanup event, and we're very proud to say that we have groups that have been with us since the start. And one of those groups, I like to just make a note of is a Marine Trawlers Owners Association. They have boats on the water, and they actually come out and do a great job. They actually had the most pounds collected, but they came to me and they said, hey, if there's an organization that is really vested in the community and they come close to us, we would like to allow them to be recognized and collect the award this year. So in that merit, the Home Depot number 6363 actually integrated and partnered with the, what was the organization?
Meadows Ranch.
Whispering Meadows Ranch, and maybe you can highlight just briefly about what they do. It touched our hearts when we were out there. I had staff members come back and say how cool your group was with having them participate. And so we like to present this plaque to Home Depot Team 6363, and thank you for participating. Thank you. You're welcome.
Just for any of you that don't know, Whispering Meadows Ranch is an organization off 100 that provides equine therapy, as well as they teach about nature and teamwork to young adults and children with developmental disabilities and physical disabilities. So they've had a work skills class that we've worked with for the last 2.5 years that we've taught how to use tools and build small projects, things like that. We've had them come to the store several times to show them the type of jobs that they could learn to try to do. And they've been looking for an opportunity to work with the community to try to do community service because they've never done anything for anyone other than themselves before. So when they heard about the waterway cleanup that we were doing, they got excited and wanted to participate. So it was really great to have 18 of them came out, and they learned about the safety involved in coming out with us, and they wore their orange shirts, and they got to be part of a group, and we've never had so much fun cleaning up trash. So it was really great. We had a lot of, everyone brought someone with them from our store, so we had all our families came out with us, and then with them, there were 40 of us, and we had a great time cleaning up trash. So thank you.
Thank you.
And City Council, I'd just like to recognize one more individual that we do not have on the PowerPoint, but it's the creative mind behind Captain Humanity. And Mr. Tim Wilsey is actually here tonight, and I'd like to just introduce him and welcome to the podium as well. Mr. Wilsey, on behalf of City Council and City staff, I want to recognize you with this honorary Waterway Cleanup Staff shirt that's signed by each of the council members.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
And that finishes my PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much. Job well done. And congratulations. I don't know if I mentioned this at a meeting or not, but Denise is one of the 2013 graduates of the Regional Community Institute, a prestigious group of individuals who spent months and months and months studying issues in our 7-county region. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor.
One of 146 graduates, I think. Agenda item number 4, an ordinance relating to the contraction de-annexation of property commonly known as Florida Agriculture Museum. Mr. Reichman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, for the voluntary contraction or de-annexation of the city boundary by de-annexing 388.8 acres more or less of real property, as well as a strip of Interstate 95 right-of-way generally located north of Old Kings Road and east of U.S. Highway 1. It's more particularly described, legally described in the ordinance Exhibit A. It's attached here too, and fully incorporated herein by this reference. This is providing for the amendment of city boundaries to contract the subject property from the city boundaries, provides for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, severability, and provides for an effective date.
Thank you. Mr. Landon.
Mayor, City Council, this is the second reading of this ordinance. It's actually the implementation ordinance for the agreement between the city, Flagler County, and the Ag Museum Board to really try to improve the whole exposure of the museum and make it more of a tourist attraction here in Flagler County. To accomplish that, this de-annexation is one of the goals, so that the county will then use their rules and have it be more rural and agricultural in nature. So with that, we're recommending approval.
Council questions? None? Open the meeting to the public, and from the public wish to be heard on agenda item number 4. Seeing no one approach the podium, we'll close public portion meeting, come back to council. Additional questions, comments, or a motion?
Move approval of agenda item number 4, an ordinance relating to the contraction de-annexation of property commonly known as the Florida Agricultural Museum.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Yes.
Councilmember DiLorenzo?
Yes?
Councilmember Ferguson?
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis?
Yes.
Mayor Netz?
Yes.
Mayor, this motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 5, an ordinance relating to a future land use map amendment for 16 plus or minus acres subject property from Greenbelt to conservation. Mr. Reichman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, providing for the amendment of the City of Palm Coast 2035 Comprehensive Plan as previously amended. It's pursuant to Section 163.3184 Florida statutes. It's amending the future land use map, also known as the FLUME, a designation for approximately 16 acres of certain real property from Greenbelt to conservation as depicted in Exhibit A, which is attached to the ordinance. This ordinance provides for conflicts, ratification of prior acts, codification, severability, and provides for an effective date.
Thank you. Mr. Landon.
Mayor, City Council, I guess tonight is going to be cleanup night. This is really another implementation ordinance that has to do with the FLUME or Comprehensive Plan Amendment to implement a zone change that occurred a few months ago, and Jose will give the presentation.
Sure.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. Jose Papa for the Community Development Department. Again, this is a cleanup item based on an application that was approved last year by City Council. What we have is a 16-acre parcel, which currently has a future land use map designation of Greenbelt, and currently has a zoning of master plan development. It is part of the Grand Haven North master plan development, which was approved by City Council last year. Again, the subject parcel is approximately 16 acres and part of a larger 72-acre project known as Grand Haven North. And as a condition of that master plan development, additional preservation areas were to be identified as part of this MPD. And so we've come to, and as part of the creation of that MPD last year, this 16-acre parcel was identified as a future conservation or preservation area. So essentially the amendment is this. The 16 acres currently has a designation of Greenbelt, and that will be changed to conservation, adding another layer of protection to protect it from future development. So the findings include that, again, the change will protect the parcel from development, whereas Greenbelt permits 1 unit per acre. And as a conservation land use designation, no density or intensity allocation will be allocated to that parcel. There will be no additional demand on infrastructure or in public facilities. The subject parcel is located within a special flood hazard area. And again, this is just the implementation of a condition as part of that Grand Haven North MPD agreement. Staff and the Planning Board is recommending that City Council approve the proposed amendment at first reading. This is the transmittal public hearing. This application will then be transmitted to Department of Economic Opportunity and other state agencies for their review. And they'll have 30 days to provide comments to the city, after which, after we address the comments, we will then schedule this item for a second or adoption public hearing.
Council questions? Seeing none, let's open the meeting to the public. And from the public, who wish to be heard on agenda item number 5? Seeing no one approach the podium, we'll close the public portion meeting, go back to council. Any questions, comments, or is there a motion?
One question. Jose, the agencies were, you said they were what again?
Department of the State Land Planning Agency, we used to be DCA, is now called DEO, Department of Economic Opportunity.
Okay.
And we send it to the same state agencies we've done in the past.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, second?
Second.
Moved and second. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Yes.
Councilmember DiLorenzo?
Yes?
Councilmember Ferguson.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis.
Yes.
Mayor Nets.
Yes.
Mayor, this motion passes 5-0.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 6, an ordinance relating to a zoning map amendment from agricultural designation to preservation for 32 plus or minus acres located in the Neoga Lakes Conservation Area. Mr. Reichman.
Mayor, this is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, providing for the amendment of the official zoning map as established in Section 2.06 of the City of Palm Coast Unified Land Development Code. This is amending the official zoning map for certain real property consisting of 32 acres more or less, more particularly described in Exhibit A to the ordinance from agricultural, which is a Flagler County designation, to preservation, the City of Palm Coast designation. This provides for conflicts, for severability, and for an effective date. Mr. Mayor, this is a quasi-judicial matter.
Since this is quasi-judicial, are there any ex parte communications that need to be disclosed?
No, sir.
No.
Hearing none. Mr. Landon.
This is another cleanup item for a land use application that was approved a number of months ago. It actually is one presentation for this item and the next item, and Jose has taken this one too.
Okay. Thank you. Again, this subject parcel is 32 plus or minus acres, and just to sort of orient you as to where it is, we're way out west. This is US 1. This is the historic area of Espanola, and the subject parcel is 32 plus or minus acres off of Otis Stone Hunter Road, and this is County Road 13. Currently, it retains the Flagler County future land use map and designation of conservation in agriculture and timberlands, and it currently retains the Flagler County zoning of agriculture. Just to give some perspective, this parcel is part of the Neoga Lakes Development of Regional Impact Conservation Area. Remember that the Neoga Lakes DRI was approved in 2010 by City Council. And this map represents really the development pattern and approved development order for Neoga Lakes. And again, this, as you can see from this development pattern, that subject parcel is scheduled to be part of this larger conservation area of Neoga Lakes. Again, essentially, the two applications that you'll hear tonight. The first one, the future land use map amendment, is from agriculture and timberlands and conservation, Flagler County designation, to conservation. And the zoning map amendment is from agriculture, again, Flagler County designation, to preservation, which is the City of Palm Coast designation. Findings include that, again, the FLUM amendment, it really reduces the development potential on the parcel. Due to that reduction, there is no additional demand on infrastructure facilities. It is there to protect the environmental quality on the parcel. And for the zoning map amendment, the preservation designation is consistent with the comprehensive plan amendment. Comprehensive plan designation of conservation. And it is consistent with comprehensive plan objective 1.91, which reads that the future development of Neoga Lakes property shall provide for protection of environmentally sensitive areas and unique natural habitats, which this parcel meets those criteria. For this case, staff and PLDRB recommend that City Council approve the zoning map amendment. And if I make the recommendation of a future land use map amendment, which is your next item, the staff and City and PLDRB is also recommending approval of that item. Similar to the Grand Haven North item, the future land use map application will be sent to the state and state agencies for comments, and giving them 30 days to provide comments to the city, after which time we will schedule the FLUM amendment for a public hearing, and at the same time schedule the zoning map amendment for a second public hearing. And when we do that, we will schedule the future land use map amendment first, followed by public hearing on the zoning map.
Council questions on agenda item number 6. Open the meeting to the public and from the public which we heard on agenda item number 6. Seeing no one approach the podium, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. Go back to council. Questions, comments, or a motion?
Move to adopt.
Second?
Moved in second. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Yes.
Councilmember DiLorenzo?
Yes.
Councilmember Ferguson?
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis?
Yes.
Mayor Nets?
Yes.
Mayor, this motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7, ordinance relating to future land use map amendment for the same 32 plus or minus acres. Mr. Reichman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, providing for the amendment of the City of Palm Coast 2035 Comprehensive Plan as previously amended. This is pursuant to Section 163-3184 Florida statute, and amends the future land use map or flume designation for approximately 32 acres of certain real property from conservation and agriculture and timberlands, which is the Flagler County future land use designations, to conservation, being the City of Palm Coast future land use designation. This is all as described in more detail in the legal description, which is an exhibit to the ordinance, provides for conflicts, ratification of prior acts, codification, severability, and provides for an effective date.
Mr. Landon, anything else?
Nothing further, the presentation before.
Papa, anything else?
Nothing further, Mayor.
This was all covered. Council questions on agenda item number 7? Open the meeting to the public. And from the public wish to be heard on agenda item number 7, which is essentially what you heard in number 6. Seeing no one approach the podium, we'll close the public portion meeting, go back to council. Questions, comments, or a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
Yes.
Councilmember DiLorenzo?
Yes.
Councilmember Ferguson?
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis?
Yes.
Mayor Nets?
Yes.
Mayor, this motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 8, resolution approving a contract with Sabunji Construction, Inc. for the construction of Long Creek Nature Preserve Phase 1 improvements. Mr. Landon.
Project that's been in the works for a few years. Carl will give you the details.
Okay, good evening. I have a few slides here to go through the Long's Landing Nature Preserve project. What I have up on the screen at this point is just an overall map to give you the location of the project. The project is located on Palm Harbor Parkway, which is it's located on Palm Harbor Parkway adjacent to College Waterway, just before the Yacht Club. It is the area that's highlighted in red up on the screen. On one side, it's College Waterway. The other side is bordered by Long Creek. Phase 1 improvements are a partial development of the ultimate build-out of the site. Up on the screen is the area that's highlighted in yellow, which is Phase 1. Phase 1 improvements are mainly elements that are tied directly to a FIND grant that was obtained by the city. FIND grant will provide funding assistance for construction of those elements. On the left-hand side of the screen is College Waterway, and along that waterway there are improvements that include a boat launch into the waterway, shoreline stabilization to protect erosion, and a fishing pier. On the opposite end of the project site is a shallow walkway with boardwalk over the marsh area and a launch into Long Creek for canoes and kayaks. And
Carl, if you could clarify the boat launch. It's not a typical boat launch.
Correct. The boat launch into College Waterway is a non-motorized boat launch. It is still a access into the waterway. It's at the bottom of the site. Yeah.
You guys need to bring your own batteries.
Is it on?
So, Carl, you're talking canoes and kayaks, right?
Canoes and kayaks, basically. There may be a John boat, that someone can carry and transport, but basically it's not meant for backing a trailer up with a boat into the waterway. It's made for someone to pull up and unload a boat and carry it into the waterway, down the ramp into the water. Yeah, okay. This is the boat ramp into College Waterway here. The project will have an entry driveway a loop roadway coming around with parking spots. There's a pull-off area here adjacent to this boat launch into College Waterway, and then there's a pull-off area here to unload your canoe or kayak and haul it down, into Long Creek. There'll be associated stormwater treatment and other items, tied to those elements. Part of the phasing, there is a boat mooring that's tied to the fishing pier. This is the fishing pier along College Waterway. That boat mooring is, it was pulled from the bid. It may be something that's added back in depending on how the project goes, as well as this connection to Colchester Lane on this north end of the site. And this just gives a summary of the project. We had just, over $1.3 million funded in the C8 Capital Improvement Program. We have an additional $200,000 of park impact fees. So it brings the project funds just over $1.5 million. The low bid came in at roughly $1.5 million. We discussed some of those cost savings, the boat mooring in connection to the neighborhood that we pulled from the contract at this point. And we have a $120,000 contingency. So we have allocated just over $1.5 million for the construction at this time. And that concludes the presentation.
Carl, could you, I'm sorry, Carl, could you also highlight the grant, that this is actually grant funding from FINE?
Yeah, the elements that we're constructing in phase one, we previously had obtained a grant from Florida Inland Navigation District for the design phase of the project. Early this year, we came before council and we prepared an application to FINE again to assist in the construction funding for the project, and the city was awarded that grant. They are providing funding assistance for those three major elements that are included in phase one. There's also a developer contribution that's providing funding for the project as well, for having that boat access component as well.
Go ahead.
Will we go back later after we get through this project and make an application for a further grant?
Yeah, there are still some components of the project that are eligible for grants, not only from FINE, but possibly other grants that are out there that we will be seeking, yes.
What's the timetable for this project, Carl? When would it tentatively start and how long would it take?
It would tentatively start in the next month or two, and then construction, I believe, is about 6 to 7 months long.
So by this time next year, this phase would be done?
Yeah, correct. It would be available for use next summer is the schedule.
Is there a reason why there's no motorized boating?
The part of the grant application, this goes back to the funding that was obtained for the purchase of the property. The city had obtained two funding sources for the project. One was through the state, through Florida Community Trust. They provided half the cost for the purchase of the property of the land. And the other half came from Flagler County's Environmentally Sensitive Lands Fund, who provided the funding for the other half of the property purchase. The state grant had some stipulations. There was a master plan similar to what's up on the screen here that shows development of the site. There were many components that have to be developed, or they require as part of that grant that was given to the city. Part of it was that non-motorized access into College Waterway. Part of what we were trying to develop with the site was to have a passive park. It is a limited in terms of areas that are not that are uplands that are developable. We don't want to get into the wetlands. Having a boat access for motorized boats, there's not only is there site issues in terms of parking all those vehicles, but also into the waterway. The waterway is limited and restricted to actually get those boats in there, and for mooring and getting that type of boat traffic at this location.
Okay.
For the council questions?
Yeah. We had a budget gap of about $173,000 to make this, but we're going to transfer $200,000 in park impact fees to make up the gap, and plus we have potentially 120 in contingency, which could be available at the end as well. So will those dollars all stay in that fund for the next phase, or will they be returned to their original fund?
I'll take that one, Carl. Not sure if you can hear me, sorry. We'll actually transfer the money out of park impact fees as needed.
Okay.
They'll stay there until we actually need them in the project. And if we don't need the full amount, then we won't use the full amount.
Okay, thank you.
Ferguson.
As two-part question. Number one, a significant portion of this project is shore stabilization, something like a third or 500 and some thousand. If this weren't to be a park, would we have how would we have approached that need if a park weren't planned there? And secondly, it'd be helpful, I think, for those that care about this project to hear what portion of the total 1.5 for this phase is being reimbursed or covered by the fine grant.
Okay. The shoreline stabilization, most of the waterways that the city has adjacent to city properties do have type of sheet piling or protection. This is one segment that does not. The city has a bridge on the southern end of the property that has sheet piling now that is being replaced as part of the bridge project. And the future bridge rehab is at the north end of the project site, which has sheet piles. So there's basically a gap between the two. If this wasn't developed as a park site, possibly with the bridge projects, there'd be some connection of the two systems, or it'd be a separate project altogether. But it's something that would have been addressed at some point in time.
It would have been necessary to do that irrespective of it being developed for a park.
Yeah, this area is, we have Big Mulberry Creek that dumps into the waterway here. This is a shallow area of waterway. And to prevent the erosion and to assist in having to go in here and dredge, having that prevents, that type of future issue.
And the portion of the 1.5 is covered?
Portion of the 1.5, the fine grant is roughly $167,000.
10-15% then of the phase one cost?
Correct.
There's
certain pieces and portions of the project that they fund at a certain ratio. At most, they fund 50% for a particular item.
Of the eligible components.
Of the eligible components, correct.
Other council questions?
Just one more, please.
Please.
Carl, we both received an email about connectivity from Cimarron. So could you just touch on why the connectivity isn't possible?
There was a request from residents that live up in this area. Cimarron Drive comes in off of Palm Harbor Parkway and heads up here. And the request was to provide a walkway basically in this green area over to get to the park. This green area here is bordered by residential lots. There is no city-owned property between the green area and Cimarron Drive. So one, there's no direct connection or public connection. And the second component was a lot of this green area, part of it is water, part of it's waterways, a lot of it's wetlands. The feasibility of actually even constructing a waterway there would be difficult. One, to even obtain permits. Two, you'd be in people's backyards. And three, we didn't have access or public connection to that area.
Thank you.
Other questions? Open the meeting to the public. Anyone from the public wish to be heard on agenda item number 8?
Yes, I'm Stephen Jones. I'm a historian. I think this is a really good idea, and the reason I'm here today is to ask for your support in having the Palm Coast Historic Society, the Flagler County Historic Society, and Daytona State College with Dr. Nancy Duke able, with your permission, to go on the site while the contractor is doing the work that they're doing and make sure that we find any artifacts from going back in history that we know, in fact, are there. As you well know, Dana St. Clair has, for the past 4 or 5 years, done a number of things, and he's working on that. We'd like to be helpful both to the contractor and to Dana, and we are residents here, and as you know me, I'm one of the people that helped build this community. So, but what I want to do now is go back, and many of us, and especially with the students at Daytona State College, we can come in and, with your permission, we would go in, look for any little artifacts. We'll collect them, put them at the museum, and that way, as all of these things go on, we won't lose anything, but we'll have a number of things back, and that will make Palm Coast one of the most exciting places to come and visit. You'll be able to see some things, and with this great project going, this will be very, very positive, and it will bring a lot of visitors for a number of reasons. And then cost-wise, with volunteers of the historic societies and the students at Daytona State, no, this is not going to cost money. You just need to give permission for us to be able to help, and then we will save some time and probably help save you some money in the long run. And it will be very, very positive, very moving forward, and then we're going to be the great community that we are. And that's what I've come to talk to you about. I talked with Jim Canfield this morning, and he is, as you know, former mayor and president of the Historic Society in Palm Coast, and he wants this to happen. Then I've talked with the Historic Society in Flagler County, and Cisco Dean, who you all know, is, one of the historians there. He's been collecting all these things and doing things. And then Dr. Nancy Duke and her students have already been going out and doing a number of things. So we have a real great possibility of doing something with your help, and then we can make this the great place that it is. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to move forward and answer as much as I can. But this is the help that we think we need, and we hope that you all agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll have some comments in just a moment. Next speaker. Please.
My name is Silvia Puglisi, and I live here in Palm Coast. I myself, I was taken by a canoe on the Long Creek by our past consul and his wife, Mr. Jerry Fool. And we rode right next from next to the yacht club. We rode the canoe, launched it down there, and we took the long way. It's only to be traveled by canoe because it's very shallow. I think Mr. Landon have mentioned when you said boats, I think should be stress the fact that it should be only for rowing or canoe, because it will cost an unbelievable fortune to dredge all that, besides the impact that would be for the wildlife. The wildlife is incredible, from alligators to all the birds that you could see. It is pristine. It's incredible. So make sure that when this park is made, all of that is protected. I think it was within the original purchase requirement of the land, and I hope it's really protected. And I think it's very nice that the historians want to get involved to save any artifacts. I think I recall that originally some settlers' landing place was in there, in that Long Creek, and all of that should be preserved. If nobody ever took a canoe trip or kayak, take it. My dream will be that we could access it from the Country Club Canal by water, but I don't think it is possible to do that, because Palm Coast Parkway is what divides us from the Country Club Canal area into the Long Creek. It would be expensive, but it's beautiful. If you never taken, take it. Thank you for
Thank you.
the project. I hope you do it while preserving. Okay, thank you.
Next speaker. Next speaker. Seeing no one approach the podium, we'll close the public portion of the meeting, come back to council. But first, what Ms. Puglisi was alluding to, when we first acquired this property, and keep in mind that it was privately owned and was slated for commercial and retail and residential condominium development, Dana St. Clair, historian, found evidence of Hernandez Wharf. Once upon a time, long before there was something called ITT, these lands were agricultural, but with products that people were not thinking of in terms of Florida. Rice, indigo, and various other products. They were raised in this area. They were carried by wagon to the lower end of Long Creek, where there was large coquina block wharf, Hernandez Landing. And here the produce was removed from the wagons, put on shallow barges that were poled up Long Creek to the Matanzas River, where they were then put on larger ships and taken to market. So we were actually a commercial agricultural center long before anybody thought about developing Palm Coast. And the City Council is very much committed to protecting and preserving these historical elements. Now, Mr. Jones, should you find any artifacts, Palm Coast Historical Society gets first digs.
That's what it's about.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just want to be sure.
I'm a member there. That's what I'm doing for the gym and for others.
Your Honor,
Mr. White.
not to cast a pall on this wonderful endeavor, but if the Historical Society goes on an archaeological trek on this property, who's going to be liable for their safety?
Mr. Reichman?
But let me, before he answers, once you sign the contract, this becomes a contractor site. And it's very unlikely that the contractor would allow citizens just to wander on the site during construction because of the liability issue. And it would be the contractor's site and contractor's liability. We did hire Dana St. Clair to do the original, but Mayor, as you indicated, do the original review of the site, and he did find some historical ruins. He was also part of our design team and has been part of the review of this as far as having a professional archaeologist on site. You know, Carl, have we talked about that during the construction?
There was written into his scope that he's available for that in terms of, you know, the wharf site is on one end of the site. We are having some impact there. It's minimal. We'll have more in the future phase, but there's potential. Part of getting this site registered as a National Historic Place is to have some of those artifacts. And we've refrained from doing any digging there to disrupt the site, but during construction, if something is found, you know, Dana is on board to come to the site to work with us on those.
So that was part of our plan, but once again, just to have volunteer citizens out on a construction site, I will tell you that the contractor very likely is not going to allow that. And
the reality of the site, however, is that most of the potential historic components are to the east. The area where we're anticipating doing this work has already been pretty well disturbed by ITT development. And we're not, my understanding is there's not going to be any deep excavation. In all probability, any artifacts that may have been there have already been covered over. The only place where we'd be doing any kind of digging at all is along the shoreline stabilization component. But I think we could certainly tell Sabanji that this is an issue for us, and we're asking for their cooperation if they find something of significance.
Right, and I think having Dana St. Clair, our archaeologist, meet with the Historical Society and have representation out there is a great idea, but it needs to be done in a very controlled environment because of the liability issue and the equipment. And but be happy to meet with the Historical Society as to how Dana can make sure that any of those artifacts are recovered, and the Palm Coast Historical Society would have them for their archives.
Mr. Mayor? I think that's very important. I think we have to communicate with the contractor that this is important to us.
Yes.
And then work with between the Historical Society and the archaeologists to work together, and maybe we can have some safe times when they can, just let's communicate with the contractor and see what we can do, because we can have something very special. We already have something special, but it could be really, really special. So let's not disrupt it.
I thought you were going to say really, really unique.
We will do that. And once again, our design team included that archaeologist just for this reason. So this is something that we were planning for and is included in it. We just need to do it right.
Okay. Additional comments? Is there a motion on agenda item number 8?
Move to approve.
Second?
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries without objection. Agenda item number 9, resolution approving an exception to CDBG cost feasibility limits. Mr. Landon.
Mayor, City Council, Bo will be handling this item.
Here's an updated agenda.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Going to give you a little bit more background than I provided you at the workshop. This is the housing rehab program that was a part of the 2011 Community Development Block Grant through the State of Florida Small Cities Program. We pursued quite a few grants during that year aimed at really maintaining our neighborhoods during the economic downturn. That include other programs like the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, but specifically as part of Prosperity 2021, the Community Development Block Grant program was included as far as trying to attract investment in our neighborhoods and maintain the quality of our neighborhoods. It was once again, 2011, it was a $750,000 housing rehab grant through the Small Cities Program. This was the last year in which we qualified for this program, and then we went entitlement, which is direct funding from the federal government with a little bit more flexibility. Essentially, the housing rehab grant was to facilitate the rehab and demolition or replacement, if necessary in cases, for homeowner-occupied properties that might otherwise become sources of abandonment or blight. And the program aims to bring residents' primary home back up to minimum standards, building codes, local zoning codes, and the Department of Housing and Urban Development housing quality standards. Of course, with every grant, there is a list of both, not in this case, federal, but also state grant requirements. As part of our grant contract with the state of Florida, we committed to serving a minimum of 10 low, moderate income households. Just for example, a family of 4 would have to make less than $46,000. I will tell you the majority of applicants are well below that number. There was an application process and ranking process established at the front end, and city staff has been proceeding through that application list and serving each applicant in the order in which they were ranked. Some of the other important grant requirements is post-rehab or demo replacement, the home must meet all those code requirements and housing quality standards. As part of the contract with the state, there's long-term affordability provisions, and we secure that through a deferred payment lien that's placed on the home. Of course, there's a list of about 20 other federal and state requirements: competitive bidding, fair housing standards, Uniform Relocation Act, Davis-Bacon, etc. Tonight here in front of you, requesting an exception. Back in 2011, the City Council adopted a housing assistance plan that included cost feasibility limit of $87,500 for demo and replacement. Once again, the state program did require us to include demo and replacement as an activity. This was our first housing program. This limit was based on statewide Small Cities Community Development Block, or CDBG, program standards, and did not consider the Palm Coast local codes. For instance, 1,200 square feet minimum size, the garage requirements, landscaping, architectural standards, etc. As we continue serving applicants on the priority list, the next qualified applicant home requires demo and replacement. The home's foundation is shifting, and it's becoming unsafe for the applicant. We solicited bids based on meeting all applicable codes. The lowest bidder with $127,000 was Caprock LLC, located in Bunnell, Florida. We're requesting this exception because in order to exceed the Housing Assistance Plan cost feasibility limit, it requires City Council approval for this exception. At the workshop, City Council requested that both the consultant and the city attorney research possibility of a claim under the homeowner's insurance. We are continuing to work on that. So far, we found that most policies exclude foundation shifting settling unless connected with a covered event, such as a hurricane, a flood, a fire. The prior claim, which was made 5 years ago, was rejected, and subsequently that policy was dropped. We've requested all documents from that insurance company. They were archived because of the age of the claim. Our consultant, who's also meeting with the applicant tonight, has made a claim under the new policy, and we're awaiting an inspection and determination by that company as well. City staff will continue to pursue the insurance claim to possibly offset the grant funding, but does not change our recommendation tonight and the need to exceed the cost limits that were previously established that were based on statewide standards and not our local code requirements for houses in Palm Coast. City staff do recommend approval of this exception this evening, and I'm available for any questions.
Council questions?
Mayor, Council, I wanted to add on the discussion in the presentation that Bo made. I think there was some confusion from the workshop discussion this last week. If you may remember, the consultant with Guardian Community Insurance, Resource Management, Mr. Jenkins, had indicated that it was his memory or his understanding that there had been a claim under the homeowner's policy. Given that it was 5 years ago that the claim was made and rejected, that it's very unlikely, although we are, you know, as Bo indicated, we're going to have them pull that claim to find out exactly how it was resolved. But as you may remember, we talked about the possibility that there might be an opportunity to get some sort of contribution of funding from the homeowner's insurance, because there was a discussion. Mr. Jenkins had mentioned that there was an issue about some comments that he had heard from the homeowner about this, about whether there was any funding there. That does not appear to be the case. Again, it was 5 years ago. But most importantly, with the current insurance policy, Mr. Jenkins has already filed the claim with the current policy. As Bo has indicated, we will follow through with both the prior and the existing policy, and if there are any funds that are forthcoming available from these policies, those will go towards the cost of the work on this property for this homeowner.
Thank you. Council questions? Mr. McGuire.
When you say if the policy were to pay anything off, it would go back to the federal government?
No, it would simply reduce the amount of the money that was being used from the federal government.
Okay.
We have a pot of money.
Right.
If we don't use it here, that money will then go to the next one on the list, the next on the list, and the next on the list.
Okay, and Caprock Construction will construct a home that meets the codes of the neighborhood and looks like the rest of the homes and stuff?
That's correct, as was discussed in the workshop last week. I think that's, and again, my understanding, I'll defer to Bo, but that's why there was this request to change our policy to exceed the housing cost limits, because the prior limits had been set several years ago based upon a generalized set of standards throughout the state of Florida, whereas our codes require a higher standard.
But in the last workshop, we talked about even if the insurance company would say, yes, she's covered, it requires a $20,000 deductible that she can't meet.
Then the grant dollars would meet that $20,000 deductible, and the insurance company would pay the balance.
All right.
Right.
That's assuming that the insurance companies are going to pay.
We're following up with it. Certainly, we're trying to look under all the rocks that are potentially out there to stretch these grant monies, to stretch this federal money as far as it can go into as many possible folks that need this assistance.
Okay, and if the insurance companies say no, then we're going to revert back to this particular provision here.
Right, we'll go back to where we started with this recommendation and this request.
And how many possible homes would we, I think you said we had just this one. But are the other homes that are in the same condition?
We have other homes with structural issues that are going to be rehabbed and foundation repair will be done. This home was too extensive for those minor repairs to make the home safe, and so that's why this is the only case in our current queue of homes that need a demo replacement. Yes, sir.
Okay, so this home will require at least $87,000 to repair plus.
Right. This home, we got real bids. When we developed the scope of services that we were going to bid, our consultant developed the scope of services. We made sure that scope of services met all the local codes and housing quality codes, and we bid that out. So we have a real number about what it costs to not only replace the home, but also demo it and make it safe. So.
Okay, demo. One more question on that. The reason why we're not just going to just demo it and forget about it is what?
Well, the federal government, as part of this program, one of the rules is you can't demolish homes and not replace it. For every unit you demolish, you have to have a new one. And there's also other federal requirements about Uniform Relocation Act and various things. But yeah, essentially it's going to be on the property that this person owns.
Is that a good approach to build new homes for people?
It's the federal requirement.
Well,
I know, but
there's all different ways to look at, Mr. Lewis. I will say, without this assistance, one, there's the federal requirements, and there's the program that we operate that was set by the rules in 2011 with the state and federal requirements. But two, also, without this assistance, most likely this home will sit in this condition. The person living in the home is low income and elderly, to say the least. So without this assistance, this neighborhood would continue to see this home deteriorate. And so as part of the program of trying to avoid abandonment and blight, it will help in that condition for the neighborhood as a whole.
Other council questions?
Of the $750 that we have been awarded for this, we've spent how much?
I think
Roughly.
it's around $400,000. We originally committed to the state to serve 10. We've served 9 to date. We have another 3 that are signing contracts this week, and this will be 12. This will be number 13, and we believe we're going to have additional monies to help a 14th applicant.
So from what I hear, it's unlikely that we can rely too much on the insurance company coming forth with any money, or is that premature at this point?
We're gonna follow this one all the way to its conclusion. Everything I've read and the folks I've talked to said it's very unlikely that the insurance is going to eye on this claim, and so everyone should probably read their policies, because settlement is generally not covered unless it's part of an event. So if it occurs over time, most insurance companies will call that maintenance. For whatever reason.
And so the result of if this proceeds, then this homeowner who has a property that is in such poor condition, presumably with such little value, will get essentially a grant from the federal government and will become her property ultimately?
She will, or he or she, the applicant, in any situation where we're helping, will have a lien placed on the property to ensure that this money benefits a low-income person at that home. If anything changes where they're no longer income eligible, or they pass away and no one's able, then that money becomes due back again. And I think the term of this lien is 15 years.
How many?
15 years.
So it is not part of it, her estate if she passes, or he or she passes?
It will be, but the lien passes on with the estate.
The lien goes with the property.
So a child that
This is to
qualifies.
prevent flipping.
Right.
I see.
Right.
There's not an obligation lien. It's not like a promissory note. attached to a mortgage. It's just a lien to make sure that the conditions, the purpose of the program is met, and you don't get the wrong people in there getting these loans, these monies, and then using it for an improper purpose.
Right. So, Bo, then the lien is forgiven at 1/15th per year?
No. It is a whole, it's forgiven at the end of the
At the
term.
end? Okay. Oh, wow. That's a serious clawback.
Well, and you can understand the reasoning behind it.
Sure.
Other council questions? Open the meeting to the public. Anything from the public should be heard on agenda item number 9. Seeing no one approach the podium, we'll close the public portion of the meeting, go back to council. Additional questions, comments, or a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries that objection. Agenda item number 10, appoint 4 applicants to fill seats on the Code Enforcement Board, 2 regular members and 2 alternates. Mr. Landon, you want to walk us through this process?
Okay. Virginia, make sure I get it right, because it's a little complicated. You will get, original ballot will be for
Edward Allen, C.
Edward Allen. He is a current regular member of the Code Enforcement Board and is asked to be reappointed. He has served 1 term, so you may reappoint him with just a simple majority. We thought it might be easier to do 1 at a time. So the ballot will be just for that 1 seat, in which you'll see Mr. Allen has name on the ballot because he'd like to be reappointed. Don't have to, but it's an option.
You collecting?
Mr. Mayor, for those in the public, I just wanted to read from the code as far as what the parameters are in state law and also is codified for the selection process. It says that each member shall be confirmed by the entire city council, and I'm reading from our code. Members of the Code Enforcement Board shall be residents of the city, and appointments shall be made on the basis of experience or interest in the subject matter jurisdiction of the Code Enforcement Board. The composition of the Enforcement Board shall, whenever possible, include an architect, a business person, an engineer, a general contractor, a subcontractor, and a realtor. And that's not made up. That comes from Chapter 162 of the Florida statutes.
We have a unanimous for Edward Allen.
May I have a motion to appoint Edward Allen for his 2nd term?
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries that objection.
Next one is for the another regular seat for Ernest Roberts.
Once again on this, obviously do not vote for Mr. Allen because he's already been appointed. Just check 1, please, 1 box for the 1 seat.
What is the purpose?
Mr. Roberts is not seeking reappointment.
Mr. Roberts is not seeking reappointment.
Okay. So now we pick 1 for the 2nd seat. Do not pick Mr.
Let me clarify. There is a different Mr. Roberts who has applied. So you will see Charles Robert.
Charles Dean Roberts.
Yes, that is not the same Mr. Roberts. So
So you can vote for Charles Dean Roberts, but you can't vote for...
It's not Jack Lemmon.
So we can vote for any of these on here?
Except for Mr. Allen.
Except for the Edward Allen at the top of the list.
One vote.
1 vote.
Is that difficult?
All right, yeah.
These are the ones that scare me more than anything else.
He's scared. You don't get
Yes.
scared. You have that.
We have 3 for Charles Dean Roberts and 2 for Mr. Chagnon.
So the majority is voting for Mr.
Roberts.
Dean Roberts.
Dean Roberts.
I have a motion to appoint Mr. Dean Roberts.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries that objection.
Mayor, the next one is alternates. There's 2 alternate seats. Both of the individuals that are currently in those seats have not asked to be reappointed. So you will now get the ballot. Do not vote, obviously, for Mr. Allen or Mr. Roberts. Please put 2 check marks down, and hopefully we have a majority. But if you will vote for 2 this time for alternates.
Can I ask a question here? We just voted, and the majority of 3-2
Correct.
granted Mr. Roberts the seat. But you asked if there was any objection. Suppose there was an objection. What would have happened then?
Then we would do a roll call vote, and the majority would rule.
So the objection would be that the vote was counted properly, or
No.
or people changed their mind?
I really want to vote for Joe Smith. I really don't want...
I would campaign for some other person.
Yes. But ultimately, when I say without objection, meaning there was no negative votes.
All right.
Had there been a negative vote, my policy has always been to then have a roll call vote so we know clearly who's voting for what.
Please vote for 2.
Pick 2, huh?
Put 2 check marks in the same box.
Always got to have one in the group, huh?
Okay, we have 5 votes for Mr. Doog, 4 votes for Mr. Chagnon, and 1 for Mr. Lapadula.
Done deal. It sounds like we've got a majority for those 2 names.
Yes.
What was the first name?
We have Gerard Chagnon and Woody
Is there,
Doog.
let's do it one at a time. Is
Oh,
there a
sorry.
motion to appoint Mr. Chagnon or Shanyon as an alternate?
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries without objection. Now, the second name, you said there were 4 for,
Woody Doog.
okay. We have a motion to,
Move to approve.
Second.
moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Congratulations very much. Just for those listening or in the audience, Code Enforcement Board, very important function in this city. This is a board of residents like ourselves, like yourselves, who serve without compensation. They act, in a sense, as a hearing officer, judge, and jury for code enforcement violations. They bring the humanity, if you will, the resident perspective to the whole process. So it's a very important role that these folks play. Okay. This brings us to the consent agenda. Before we remove any items from the consent agenda, I'm going to ask if anyone from the audience wishes to speak on items 11 through 15. And the reason we're doing it this way is that your comments might encourage council to remove one item or another from the agenda. I've already been asked to remove agenda item number 11, which I will do so. But anyone from the public wish to speak on any of the consent agenda items? Seeing no one approach the podium, we will close the public portion of discussion. And is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 12 through 15?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries without objection. Agenda item number 11. Mr. Landon.
Mayor, City Council, this is the golf cart lease for Palm Harbor Golf Club. We have a current lease with a company called Easy Cart. This is now, the proposal is Club Car. It went out to bid. They were the low bid. It's a 4-year lease. We do not own the carts at the end of the 4 years. We just pay for the use of those carts. So the current lease is up at the end of this month, and then Easy Go will take their carts, and this is to replace those carts. The actual bids are lower than what we're paying today, so this will actually reduce our cost for the golf carts at the golf course. The low bid was, let me get it real quick here. Good. $64,000 per year. Yes, $64,000 per year.
Council questions?
I have a question. Jim, is this something new, or have we been leasing golf carts since we've been running a golf course?
Since day one, always done lease. That lease is, once again, is up at the end of this month, and so this is going back out and
4-year contract on an annual lease?
yes.
Thank you.
Open the meeting to the public. Anything in the public wish to be heard on agenda item number 11?
Jack Carroll, Palm Coast. This $64,000, is that going to come out of what? I mean, somebody's got to pay for that. Now, when somebody goes to play golf and he rents the cart, which is I understand it's a must. Is that rental, is that going to cover the $64,000, or is it an additional money that's going to come out of our pockets to supplement the golfers? That's my question.
Gotcha. We'll get an answer. Next speaker.
Louis McCarthy, Palm Coast. Will all repairs and upkeep on these vehicles be done by them, and the cost is their cost, not ours?
Next speaker.
George Spear, Palm Coast. $64,000 a year for how many golf carts?
I believe there's around 60 or 70 of them.
We have somebody who can answer the question, Mayor.
All right, thank you.
Next speaker. Okay, let's bring our resident expert up.
Good evening.
Okay, there were 3 questions.
Okay.
When you play golf and you rent a cart, does the rental fee cover the 64? If not, where does the balance come from? Second question, who does the maintenance and repair? And the third question was, how many golf carts?
Okay, first question. The cost of the golf carts, that is figured into our budget. And yes, there is an allocation for carts within the budget, and there's an allocation for greens fees within the budget. On the second item, as far as repairs to the carts are warranted for 4 years. 2 of the other carts, there's 70 carts, by the way, 70 golf carts, 2 utility carts, which are actually gas instead of battery. Those carts will be used for Ranger carts. And then there's a beverage cart and a range picking cart, which is what we pick the balls off the range with. All those, the regular carts are warranted for 4 years, 2 years on the range cart and 2 years on the beverage cart. And then the rest of the repairs we actually do on site, and we buy the parts.
Okay. Thank you.
How many carts are there? 70 carts, does that include the beverage cart, or is that
No.
beverage cart? So it's 70 carts, so it's actually 74 carts? Or
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's 70, it will be 70 regular golf carts.
Okay.
2 additional regular golf carts that are gas. What that does is save on the battery time that we run. And those are for going out and rangering and things of that nature when we have a tournament. What that does is that just helps us to be able to get out faster and haul more loads with it. And then, like I said, the range picking cart and then the beverage cart. And that's all included in that. Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Back to City Council. Additional questions, comments, or a motion on agenda item number 11?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries without objection. This brings us to the public participation portion of the meeting. This is an opportunity for the public to speak on any item not on today's agenda or any item that may have been discussed at a City Council workshop. Please give us your name, limit your contribution to 3 minutes.
Jack Carroll, Palm Coast. I'd like to read something, if you don't mind. This is from the Florida Sunshine Law. It says, every thought as well as every affirmative act of a public official as it relates to and is within the scope of his official duties is a matter of public concern and is the entire decision-making process that the legislature intended to effect by the enactment of the statute of this use. I noticed that on some occasions there's a little whispering going on between council members, and I don't believe that's proper, and I don't believe it's within the sunshine laws. Which brings me to the new law that was just enacted by Tallahassee. It's SB 50, and I guess this will go to our endeared counselor. The right to speak at public meetings except emergency meetings. Now, I will take it that all public meetings would include the workshop. So if the counselor would, let me know what, I haven't read the whole thing, I just got it out of the papers.
Okay. We'll get you an answer. Next speaker. Next speaker.
Kimberly Weeks, Supervisor of Elections. I guess tonight, after the workshop yesterday, you're going to make a decision on the room or rooms that we're going to be able to use for early voting beginning in 2014. I'd like for you to consider some things before making your decision, and it would be to look into the voter's eye, and if you can tell a voter face-to-face that you don't mind if they stand in the rain or the heat or in line for extended periods of time because they're restricted to vote in a smaller room as opposed to setting up 60 votes in this room. And if you're running for re-election and you think that that could get you re-elected, let your conscience be your guide. I'd also like to ask you to think about our veterans who fight for our freedoms and the right to be able to vote, or to tell a soldier that it's okay for them to wait in the rain or the heat, or to stand in line while you five occupy this large room, or allow someone to occupy this large room for an event that would bring in less participation than it would for voters. There's no other activity that could be scheduled that could generate the attendance to the large room than voting, and nearly 80% of the voters are in Palm Coast, are right here in Palm Coast. When you think every vote isn't important, when somebody circles the parking lot or is discouraged to vote because they have to wait in line, I'd like to ask you, Mr. DiLorenzo, to keep in mind that you won your election by 36 votes and Mr. McGuire won his by 55. Doesn't take long over an 8-day period for 36 or 55 voters to decide that they're not going to vote, which could be a determination of a different outcome in an election if you or anybody else would be running for public office. Also, other than Mr. Lewis's statement yesterday at the workshop as to why you couldn't use the smaller room for your events and allow us to use this larger room during elections, the response was because we don't want to. To date, I don't recall that you've given any valid reason as to why you couldn't or shouldn't use the two smaller rooms and leave the larger room for the voters. A perfect compromise would be just that. You use the two smaller rooms and allow the voters to use the larger room. Doing so would be considerate and would reduce wait time for the voters and provide safety to the voters as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Louis McCarthy, Palm Coast. I think I've been reading all about this chess being played with these rooms. First of all, I think that the honored lady here don't take into account what goes on here. It's not just city council meetings that are going on in this room. And also, I don't think she has any data to show at any given day how many people will be coming here on an early vote, and this is only for early voting. I say use this room, this large room, for the day of the elections, but not for early voting. Early voting is a 10-day stretch, and you're tying up things for 10 days and disrupting the whole place. And not that I don't know about voting or know that I have been pushed aside not to vote. I vote every time. And and I think I cherish it. I believe this thing about soldiers in the rain and in the snow and this, that, and lines and all that. I've done it all.
I can assure you.
Thank you. I don't think so. I think that once you use the 2 other rooms that are proposed and everything, and get the data, to show, hey, look, we need this, and it'll give us or give the city council a chance to see that kind of data. But right now, there's no data. There's nothing to show that you really, you need extra space. There's no question about that. And you're getting extra space. But you're also getting 2 rooms that you can lock up your equipment in and come back every single day and open it up and have it in the 2 rooms. Otherwise, if you have it in here, you have to break down your equipment and put it together and then back up again. And it's jockeying back and forth. It disrupts everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Celia Puglisi.
Pull the microphone down, please. Thank you.
My name is Celia Puglisi. I hope we will all state our names here, because there was, I think, one person that I didn't know who he represented when about the golf carts, and I wanted to ask about that. And okay, my view as a poll worker working for Peggy Border for many years to her request, and working for the current supervisor of election, which I held as expert as Peggy Border, or even better. I can speak as a poll worker. What takes place on a very crowded precinct. We should be proud that we have in Palm Coast 80% of the electorate of this county. 80% of the people live here. The last time I served on a precinct, the city of Benel gave us their historical city hall, as big as this one, to hold elections. And this was just for the elections that were for the referendum. I was on the Rimfire gym, which is big as this, for the 2012 elections. And we had people standing up outside and inside, like I mentioned in my other. You had to be a poll worker to speak about data. And only our SOE, with her experience, is requesting what 80% of the voters in Palm Coast we need. We need this larger room. It's the voters that need it. It's not even Mrs. Weeks, that she is the officer for our elections. The voters need it. You need to do it for us, the voters. And only being a poll worker, you can speak and attest to that. Nobody that spoke before me against this issue has ever been a poll worker or worked on these past elections like I did. And I can give you my word that I felt sorry on the 2012 election. I was standing up for 6 hours because I gave my chair and some of my colleagues, poll workers, helpers, as a clerk for the people to have one more booth to vote, because at times you never know how many people are going to show at the same time. We cannot control the voters. We cannot tell the voters by law, come at this time or come at that time to even out. There is no way to control that. Everybody needs to keep that in mind. People come to vote whenever they want to. They don't want to vote absentee because by mail, because it's on their right to vote the way they want it. We cannot tell the people, you need to vote absentee, so there are not so many lines, and we don't need so many precincts. People vote is the right to vote, and they choose how to vote.
15 seconds.
If people do not want to vote absentee, sir, we cannot force them. So we have no control how many people are going to show up. And these lines are going to be as bad as they were in the library, 75 minutes wait. And you don't want to be having that on your conscience. Please give the voters the larger room.
Thank you. Next speaker. Next speaker. Seeing no one approach the podium, we close the public portion meeting, come back to council. But first, Mr. Reichman. Question about the Sunshine Law, and specifically as it relates to workshops.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Carroll asked about Senate Bill 50, and he's exactly correct. And I'd mentioned this in a prior city council meeting. And that's been codified in the Florida statutes, Mr. Carroll, as section 286.0144. If you take a look at our agenda under public participation, there's a specific reference to that section. So a lot of people know it as Senate Bill 50, but it's not Senate Bill 50 anymore. It's actually in the Florida statutes now, which is the same chapter regarding governing the sunshine. And so even though this council has always, and is codified in its council rules and procedures, this council has always allowed participation by the public to speak on any matter that comes before it on a business meeting. They've expanded that to make sure that there is the right to speak for anyone that wants to talk about a workshop item. And the way that this council has chosen to do this is, and it's set forth in this public participation instructions that's it will be in this agenda and will be in all future agendas, so that if there's an agenda item that is discussed or anything that's discussed at a workshop meeting of the council, remember now, workshops, the council can't take final action, so there's not going to be it won't be an opportunity for the council to take any action on something that was in a workshop without the council having the opportunity to hear the input from the public, which is obviously the purpose of Senate Bill 50. And so, like as the mayor indicated this evening, if anyone from the public wants to talk about something that was on a workshop or discussed at a workshop, prior workshop, this is the appropriate place. There is an opportunity, there is a forum for the public to participate in discussing anything that comes up at a workshop.
Thank you.
Is that what SB 50 is?
Beg your pardon?
Is that what that law says? SB 50?
Yeah. To reiterate what the attorney said, when the Senate proposed this, it was Senate Bill 50. Once it goes into law, it becomes part of the statutes of the state. It's no longer SB 50. It
was just voted in this Monday.
It actually became effective October 1st. It was voted in the last legislative session, and it's in the Florida statutes, Mr. Carroll, at 286-0114.
And I encourage you all to go up to Tallahassee and get your 3 minutes at their podium.
Good luck.
Oh, that's right. It doesn't apply to them.
Yeah.
I forgot that. And council members, Mr. Carroll raised an interesting question about sunshine. Please don't whisper among yourselves. We have microphones that are on all the time, but no whispering. If you have something to say it publicly. Okay. The remainder of public comment has to do with the issue of allocation of space in this building for voting. I think for the benefit of the public, we need to clarify that there are two different kinds of voting. There is early voting, which, as Mr. Carroll was suggesting, is 13 days in length. And then there is an election day. There's a primary election day and a general election day. What City Council discussed at its workshop yesterday was a compromise position that I've offered, such that the rooms 107 and 108, which are at the other end of the hallway, which are together larger than the room at the library and larger than the room at the Supervisor of Elections office, that those rooms be used for early voting. Early voting spread out, if you take the 80% of the population, spread it out over 13 days, and spread it out over 8 hours, so however long early voting is.
8 to 12 hours?
How long?
8 to 12
Eight,
hours.
8 to 12, okay. It is our judgment that those rooms would probably be adequate for early voting. What we have suggested, and what I am going to recommend to City Council, to direct the manager or to ask the manager, that the larger room here be used for the primary election day, when you will get all those who don't vote early or absentee. They're going to come out to one of 20-some-odd voting places within the county, but the larger room would be used for those 2 voting days. The one day, the day of the primary election, there is no conflict at the moment, and so we will reserve that room for voting. There is a conflict on the general election day, which is November 4th. That is also the day of a city council meeting, and city council, and I'm going to defer to the attorney on this in terms of what our options are. We could hold the meeting elsewhere, but then it would not be televised, or we could reschedule the meeting for a different day, a Monday or a Thursday, if that's consistent with our ordinance, or if the agenda is not particularly large, we could simply cancel the meeting. But I will defer to the attorney as to what our options may be.
Exactly correct, Mr. Mayor. The only proviso is that the ordinances which set forth the time and locations for your business meetings, your council business meetings, which were adopted in 1999 and the year 2000, provided that your business meetings be conducted at this location. So we would need to potentially, if it was the decision of this council to have the council meeting on November 4th, 2014 at another location, we would potentially need to amend that to the year 2000 ordinance to allow it to be conducted at another location.
What about the option of simply canceling the meeting? Now, I know
That you wouldn't need to, that would
but
just
doesn't
be.
the ordinance obligate us to have 2 meetings a month?
Yes, yes.
So,
I'm sorry, at least one,
I think it's, isn't it one?
It's just at least one.
Okay,
Yes, I'm
all
sorry,
right.
I misunderstood.
we've got a year
Yeah.
to wrestle with that issue.
Your charter requires, which is again referenced in your council rules and procedures, that there be at least one business meeting per month.
And you can change the date. Instead of it being the 4th, it could be
That would be the other option. You could just have it here, but you could have it another date.
another day.
Okay. And that's something we can wrestle with, and it's, as long as we meet the requirements for adequate public notice.
Correct.
Whether we're going to cancel, whether we're going to reschedule, or whether we're going to relocate, as long as we meet the adequate public notice, we're good.
That's correct.
Okay. So, we're now ready for a discussion by City Council of matters not on the agenda. Mr. McGuire? Mr. Lewis? Mr. DiLorenzo?
Just a reminder that my town hall meeting is next Tuesday, October the 8th, in this room, 6:30, with Board of County Commissioner Chair Nate McLaughlin and School Board Chair Andy Dance, and also the sheriff will be joining us. So we can cover every question.
Everything.
But we'll try to cover every question. So this room, October 8th, 6:30. And since I
Nobody
left...
from mosquito control?
No, I'm sorry. Failed to ask them. That's my bad, I guess. I failed to bring my Dr. Seuss book, so I guess we won't have a government reading of Dr. Seuss this evening. You don't know? I'll tell you
Green
later.
eggs and ham.
I must have missed something.
We're not filibustering here today.
Oh. Mr. Ferguson. All right. My only comment is I am going to recommend to the city manager that we proceed with the supervisor of elections as we discussed yesterday and as I've outlined this evening, that rooms 107, 108 be provided for early voting, and that room 102 be provided for the primary election day and general election day for 2014.
We'll make that happen.
Okay.
Mayor, may I ask you, yesterday we discussed at the workshop that it wasn't just for 14, that it was going to be for future elections because of the law requirements?
Yeah. Ms. Weeks points out that one of the issues that we've dealt with in the past when the Flagler County Board of Commissioners truncated the number of polling places, people who used to vote here now had to vote here, and that's confusing. So what we're doing is, absent a hurricane or some horrible disaster, we are committing that this Palm Coast Community Center will be used for future voting. Now, it's conceivable we might get a bigger and better place. I doubt it.
I'm just saying for the agreement, that it's not just specific to
Yes,
2014.
yes. That's my understanding.
Yeah, we will make sure that the letter includes the fact that this building will be open for Election Day and early voting. And then every 2 years, we can decide what room, but it will be available at this building. It was the idea.
Discussion by city attorney of matters not on the agenda.
Nothing further.
Discussion by city manager of matters not on the agenda.
Just the weather's changing, it's getting nice. We have
Always nice.
extremely nice.
Nice.
I would really encourage everybody to take a look at the calendar. I won't go through all of it, but October, a lot of sporting events. We're starting senior games this year here in Palm Coast. The running series continues with the Pink Army run in October. It's just a lot going on, and would really encourage everybody to check out the community calendar and
Mr.
get out and
Lannon,
enjoy it.
you can find out all about the senior games by listening to Chamber Chat Saturday morning.
There you go.
Georgia Turner and myself and Casey Ryan are going to tell you all about it.
And that's something new here that I think would be very popular and very consistent with our Prosperity 2021 and trying to get people to come visit us. So.
And I want to thank Mr. McGuire for, I think, being part of the catalyst to get Palm Coast involved in, Flagler County involved in these senior games.
I would say he was a lead catalyst.
It's only the first step in a major journey.
Every journey begins with a first step. Mr. Landon, is that it?
That's all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Move to adjourn.
We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
I thought they were voting on that.